And then, of course, the biggest question that we got in this past couple of days is what happens to the departed ones, to the people who passed on, the people who died in an accident like this? I mean, what happens? You're just sitting there in a car, a bridge falls on top of you, and you're gone. Do you feel pain? Do you hurt? What happens to you? So, first of all, my heart goes entirely out to all of those people who have gotten hurt, injured, or unfortunately have lost their lives in this terrible tragedy that took place here in Miami, where this bridge, this pedestrian bridge, collapsed and fell upon these cars. And it's just a terrible tragedy. And a whole lot has been said about this accident or this incident. A whole lot has been said and speculated. And you know, at school here, people have been asking us, people have been calling the office. In class last night, people were asking, and, people want answers, what, from our perspective, from the philosophical perspective that we advocate here, that we promulgate here, people want to know, what can you tell us? How can we make sense of a tragedy like this? There's quite a bit of knowledge in this area, as a matter of fact, and in fact, this has been known for many thousands of years. And I can tell you that the person does not suffer. Now, the explanation as to why that's the case is lengthy and beyond the scope of this presentation, but I can tell you that that person does not suffer. And what ends up happening is something analogous to when a baby is born on this earth. Sometimes a baby is born and you have a team of people receiving the baby in the physical world, right? So you have a doctor, a physician, an obstetrician, a nurse, a technician, a pediatrician, the mother, the father, the grandmother. In other words, you might have 20 people there, relatives or not, receiving the baby, right? And that's a soul that incarnated into this world and is beginning a whole new life. But you have a team of people dedicated to guiding the baby into life, basically. Well, the same exact thing happens in the other world. When a person dies here, it's like being born over there, but they don't go as a baby. But oftentimes, especially in a case where death was kind of sudden like this, they go in a state of sleep, equivalent to sleep. It's almost like those babies who are born, unfortunately, and they have some sort of physical situation, or they're born premature and they have to stay in an incubator for a number of weeks in some cases, and they might be asleep most of the time. It's almost like that. In other words, the person crosses over. There's no pain, but they are in a state of basically suspended animation. They're basically asleep, and they remain so for a while. It's almost like an anesthesia sort of thing. And gradually, they begin to wake up. And when they begin to wake up, there are people over there who basically share with them what's going on, where they are, what happened, and begin to acclimatize them to their new reality. The process of understanding what's going on and how their lives continue is very interesting. Nothing in the universe is left to chance. Nothing is left to chance. In other words, there are mechanisms built into us that we're not familiar with. And we somehow know all of this already because we've been there before. So when it happens again, the part of us that was dormant kind of wakes up and say, oh yeah, I know what's going on. You see, we kind of understand. And we also understand that there are no accidents, really, from this point of view that we're talking about. In other words, it was their time to go. Because whatever they came to do here on this earth at this time was done. They had to go. So people say, well, but the person was so young. And there's a famous phrase that I love in this awesome book, one of my favorite books, called My Life After Dying. The book was re-edited into a different name, called Order to Return, by Dr. George Ritchie. It was published in 1992. One of my favorite books. And in that book, he says that he died back in 1942. Now, this was a psychiatrist, a person of, he died, he was dead for 9 minutes and came back. And he says that during those 9 minutes, somebody comes to visit him, somebody that he identifies as Jesus. But he does say that he only sees that entity as Jesus because he was a Christian. And he says it right there. He says, most likely if I was a Muslim, I would have seen Allah or maybe Moses if I were Jewish, whatever. In other words, our minds seem to be conditioned to certain figures, and that's the way he interprets that entity or that energy there as a person by the name of Jesus. But the point is that one of the first questions that happen, one of the first interaction that happens with them in this other world, because his body is dead in a hospital, the doctor signed it, dead, but he's not dead. He's still experiencing life in this other dimension. And he kind of complains, saying to this person, Jesus, he says, well, I'm so young to die. This is just not right. He was like 21 or 22 years of age at that time. And Jesus says to him, well, you're not too young to die, and nobody's too young to die because there's no death. You see? So as you can tell, you're not dead, you're interacting with me, and on and on and on. So nobody's too young to die. It hurts us humans who remain here, but when we do cross over and we kind of begin to, the veil, of illusion is lifted from our eyes, and we begin to understand these different dimensions, we also begin to understand that really nobody's too young to die because there's no death. We come into the earth, we live an experience, and sometimes we leave sooner than others. In some lifetimes, we stay a whole bunch more time, sometimes less time. It depends on what we came here to do in the different circumstances that we find. What's important about this is that the person isn't suffering. The person who left the earth is learning their own lessons as well. And the universe is so interconnected, so marvelously interconnected, that when a person, just as when a baby is born, we hire an obstetrician, let's say, right? The birth of the baby is, from the perspective of the obstetrician, another job, a job from which this person can feed his or her family, let's say, right? In other words, by having a baby, let's say in a hospital, and the doctor assisting the mother in having the baby, we give life to the different professionals who help us. Does that make sense? Now here on the earth, we don't really say it like this. We don't say, well, we're giving life to the doctor and the nurse. We say, no, they're making an income by working at the hospital. But really that income or the money that they make is their livelihood. So it is appropriate to say that every one of our needs, when satisfied by others, give others life. Similarly, when we cross over, there are those who assist us, so-called family members, as well as so-called professionals, in the sense that those are people whose mission it is to help us into this crossing. But as we cross, we give them life too, in the sense that this is what they're there for. This is their mission. This is their pleasure. This is their, in serving, they're also growing. You see? So the universe doesn't waste anything. Every single experience works out for the greater good anyway. Now, there's no death, as I said. So we cross over, and eventually we have to continue our experience. So anyone who's familiar with hypnosis, for instance, will invariably, regardless of your beliefs going into it, invariably, you're going to come up with a situation where a person in deep hypnosis begins to talk about experiences in different times, at different times in history. And eventually you begin to put a whole bunch of these stories together and read a bunch of other people, and you begin to realize that we exist continuously. There's only one life. But we can experience this life on many different planes, in many different realms. The physical, what we call the physical realm, is just one of them. But there are other realms. And our lives is continuous. We periodically visit the physical realm, and get this gets interesting. We periodically visit the physical realm without leaving our true existence. So the example I give sometimes in class, imagine that we have one of those balloons, those party balloons that we inflate and they grow linearly like that. So if I have the little balloon here deflated in my hands and I begin to inflate it, right? I begin to blow in it and it begins to grow, right? The balloon is expanding into this direction towards you, let's say. But the other part of the balloon that's in my mouth where I'm blowing isn't leaving this position. So if you ask me, well, where is the balloon? Well, the balloon that was here is now all the way over there, but is also here because it expanded. And if you get this analogy, you realize that what we really are doesn't really go to the earth. what we really are projects a part of itself onto the earth, onto a physical body. See, this is an important understanding. So we live a human, a physical experience, but we're also living a multitude of other existences, if you will. Just like the balloon, there's a whole bunch of little positions along the length of the balloon here. We are existing simultaneously on many different realms, you see. And each one of those existences, or our existence in each one of those realms, has, or we have, a different understanding. And we call this a paradox, because from the perspective of the human being here on the earth, who has lost a loved one or who has just departed the earth in a terrible tragedy, from that perspective, you know, it seems like a painful, bad, and negative thing. Whoever made a mistake should pay for it. It sometimes feels that way, and it's normal, because part of the process of dealing with the pain has to do with anger. You know, we go through denial, we go through anger. You know, the grief process is complex. We're human beings, so it's okay to want to blame somebody. You know, but it's part of the process. But eventually, you get past that. However, from the perspective of this other part of us, the part of us that is eternal, the part of us that never dies, we realize that there is a wonderful purpose behind everything. Everything happens for a reason. Everything is there for a reason. Everything is in order. Everything is just right. Everything is happening according to an immaculate plan that is designed to create evolution, growth, development, and some degree of ultimate fulfillment for all of us. And we call it a paradox because, you see, it looks so different. In other words, from one angle, from the human angle, it may look like a tragedy. From the divine angle, from the eternal angle, there's no tragedy. Everything is in order. There are no accidents. Everything's accounted for. And you've noticed how exact some of these natural laws are, because in a tragedy such as the one that happened here at the university in Miami, where the pedestrian bridge collapsed, you see that in some cases a bridge slammed into half of a car. There was one case in which, you know, one passenger got out and another person didn't, apparently. In other words, it's like it's that exact. You know, no, there are no accidents in this process. So I'm just here to tell you that although we humanly hurt when we lose a loved one, you know, it's a tragedy, it's sad. I'm here to tell you that they are not hurting. They are in good shape. They are being assisted by many loving souls, and they understand why it was their time to cross over. Now, when you say, well, they understand it already, or is it going to take another month? Well, remember that time, the concept of time, changes quite a bit from this world to the next world. So what to us could be, you know, 1 week, to them could be a year, or vice versa. In other words, time is very elastic. Time is very elastic here on the earth. When you're having fun, time flies. When you're bored, time drags on forever. In other words, even here on the earth, time is very elastic as far as our perception of the passage of time is concerned. Much more so when you switch worlds or switch realms like that. But for those of you who are listening, for those of you who may be affected by the loss, my heart goes out to you, and I'm here to tell you there's hope. You know, if you want to talk about this, feel free to call the office. I'll be happy to talk to you. Feel free to come to our school where we discuss these topics further. But even if you choose to do neither, remember that, and if you're not in this region of the country, if you want to call on the phone, we can talk on Skype, on the computer, whatever you want. I'm here to serve you. But even if we don't end up meeting, I wish we would meet, but even if we don't, remember that everything is in divine order. Everything is part of a perfect plan. And yes, we suffer, we hurt in some cases, but that hurt, that pain is going to be somehow part of our growth, part of our development, our you know, we're going to grow as a result of all that, because we're going to become more generous, more human. We're going to become better people as a result of it. And at the end, we all have to go anyway. Nobody remains here forever. It's just a matter of some of us going a little bit sooner than others. But by staying, we have an opportunity to learn a few more lessons before we go join them. So anyway, these are very, very dense topics, very delicate topics. If you want to discuss this further, like I said, give me a call, send me an email, whatever. We'll discuss this further. And if not, put a comment below this video asking questions, and I'll be happy to respond, and I'll be happy to record this. We've been teaching this for about 30 years, and there's a whole lot more that goes into this. And according to your level of interest, I will be happy to share what we have learned in this past few years. Thank you very much, and blessings to all of you.